Hi there, welcome along to this brand new programme, The Betting Oracle, with me, Jim Dillahunt, and my special guest every week, the legendary punter, Harry Finlay. We'll be tackling all sorts of sports betting subjects as the week goes on, tackling various different sports on the programme. Quite a few to get through today, and of course we're just coming off the Cheltenham Festival, so we're going to start with racing this week, and of course Cheltenham 4 days last week, all sorts of dramas all through the 4 days, from the champion hurdle right through to the Gold Cup on the Friday. And Harry, of course, going back to 2008, you were very much involved with that great Gold Cup winner Denman, so obviously fantastic memories for you before we even get to this year.
Yeah, that seems like a long time ago, Jim, but no, it was fantastic. More so the being involved with the tactics and being involved with Paul Barber than anything else, but no, great memories, but I'm afraid there was no great memories from this week. Just the one, really. We had a bloodbath on the Tuesday, not helped by the fact we saw the close-up of Lozzie mouth with the blood on the nose, and couldn't help laying a bit of win and place because we were against him we were against her with the new line anyway. But no, got lucky, really. Got out on the Hunter Chase race, which luckily three people tipped me into the winner, the Henry Crow horse. Barton Snow, so that really was a get out of jail card, and so impressed with the ride. Yeah,
tell me a bit about that Barton Snow, because one or two of the specialist publications beforehand were suggesting that this horse was a 2-miler, but obviously many people who spoke to you knew that the 3 1/4 in the Fox Hunters was going to be absolutely fine.
Well, funny enough, I think that we're both right, really, because the rumour was that the plan was always for Aintree, and I think once the rain never come, I think if it had been soft ground, might have been a different situation. So obviously, the good ground probably made the difference and made him go. But the comment straight after the race from Tony McCoy, he said he rode him like God.
I mean, this is an amateur jockey.
Talk about praise from Caesar. He rode him like God. Now I know apparently he's a really tricky horse, and he only does so much in front. And I don't know if the legend Tony McCoy knew that, but if he did, that's probably why he said he rode him like God. But if not, it's an even better ride than he thought. And hopefully the plan, as I say, the plan was Aintree was the number one plan. And with the weather forecast looking good for the next couple of weeks, I'll be very surprised if I'm not on him again. And hopefully Henry Crow will be, because when he comes to the elbow, it might be another hard ride for him. But he was so good at Cheltenham, and thanks very much, Henry.
And the beauty of that race at Aintree, of course, you come down half a mile in trip. You come down from 3 1/4 to 2 3/4, and that horse is definitely, as it showed after the last, demolished the last, by the way, as it showed after the last, it's got a little kick.
Well, exactly. Against that, it's all very well holding on to a horse and just winning, but you're against a horse who normally comes from. I've never seen him that close to favourite. I actually laid the favourite before the race because I had so many other fans, and I thought he's so old now getting on. But I got out of that position in running, so I've never seen him so close. So I really do think I think McCoy was right. It was an exceptional ride, and a great get out of jail card, because going into that race, I was well behind.
Of course, the great AP McCoy that Harry's talking about was twice champion jockey at the Cheltenham Festival. I thought it'd be more, actually, when I looked that up. He was only champion jockey at Cheltenham twice, but of course he went out famously on one of Martin Pipe's horses in a handicap, a horse called Unsinkable Boxer, and Martin Pipe put his hand on his thigh and he says, AP, this is the biggest certainty that's ever stepped out onto a racecourse. And of course, going back to those days, Harry, AP got the job done, didn't he?
He did, and I wasn't on, I'm afraid. I must be the only people who wasn't on. But the thing I remember most about him going out at Cheltenham was when he got his complete face kick smashed in. And I remember thinking that he cannot ride this race. He come out going to post, and he had I remember him saying to me once about when his hand nearly fell. I think he's the toughest man in the sport ever. I think he's a lunatic, man.
Yeah, of course, there was a really well-backed favourite in one of the big handicaps. That was Dan and Harry Skelton with Supremely West in the Pertemps final, and quite a lot of bets were landed, and it was quite a controversial one, Harry, because a few people had looked at that race beforehand and thought, how can that horse have performed so badly and yet be so well backed and come to win? But I'm afraid that's the story with some of the Cheltenham handicaps, isn't it? That's the way it works.
You can tell us the story, Jim.
Well,
you were on.
I was on. I mean, I'll be honest.
I'll let you tell that story.
I'll be honest and say I looked at that race and I thought, if you can't beat them, you have to join them, because without accusing anybody of cheating, of course that wouldn't happen, but Supremely West had quite an interesting build-up to that race, and I think they thought it was very well handicapped. And of course, Scottish owner Jimmy Fife, Scott like myself, Dundee United director, he managed to get his first winner at the festival. So it was tremendous for him. But Harry Skelton rode that like a horse that they knew was going to win, Harry. Did you not think so when you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'll do what Glenn says on the horses, and we never bet him. I think we were going to bet the other Dan Skelton one that won the handicap on the first day, but it just went a bit short for us, and otherwise we'd have bet that one. But no, we weren't on that one, no.
Let me tell you, Harry is going to come up with his best bet of the weekend much later in the programme. It's not horse racing, it's not football, although we're going to touch on the football very shortly indeed. But I'm going to mention one or two horses for this weekend. They've already appeared in my racing column in the newspaper. The first one is Strong Run, couple of mares actually. First one is Strong Run, which is trained by Fergal O'Brien, goes for the 3 o'clock at Newbury on Saturday. It's a big mares final, it's worth £65,000 at Newbury. Now, Johnny Burke, who's Fergal's stable jockey, he could have ridden the other horse from the yard, Edith Pelham, but he's chosen to ride this one, Strong Run. It's a handicap debutant. They think that it's very nicely handicapped, I think, going into this. You're not going to get rich at 4-1, but I think you'll get a real good run for your money. And then another one that runs in a mare's race this weekend up at Kelso. It's one of the Paddy Brennan syndicate horses. Paddy Brennan, of course, a man who won the Cheltenham Gold Cup on Imperial Call. I think it was Call a few years ago. That'll come back to me. But it's a Dan Skelton trained horse. It's going to be ridden by a jockey called Liam Harrison, who's been riding it all season. And it's called Belle Legrand, or Belle Legrand, whatever you prefer. Belle Legrand. And this one again, it looks as though it's been prepared specifically for this 100 grand final. So Belle Legrand at Kelso and Strong Run at Newbury. Those are the two for me on the old ponies this weekend. But of course the football continues this weekend, and it's a League Cup final day in England on Sunday. Fascinating contest between Arsenal and Manchester City. And Harry, I'll bring you in here because obviously Arsenal would appear to have this Premier League won, don't they?
Yeah, 9-1 on now. 9 on and 9 against City. No, massive results last weekend when Arsenal scored very late. And of course West Ham got the draw against City. So no, the league looks over, and I'd have no opinion on the cup final because I know, Matt, I'd obviously just prefer Arsenal as things stand, but who wants it quite the most on the weekend? I don't know, and I'll be watching it in running. Nearly all my football's in running anyway, but certainly no opinion going into the game.
Well, outright betting on that League Cup final, 4-5 Arsenal, 15-13 City. When you say, Harry, you're watching the game and running, and are you just looking to see if you can nick a bit of value there?
Yeah, well, I do the football money on my own, and there's so many clever syndicates and so many people now. Whereas in the old days, pre-Lizard or whatever, I'd look for team news myself, and that I don't even bother with that now, and I just watch games start and then have opinions in running, and base it around that really. I still like to bet the Asian handicap in running if I can. If I got a close game and I fancy a team's on top, I do like a draw no bet.
And what are the advantages of the Asian handicap for people who are just tuning in and thinking, what's he on about?
Well, it's always two runners, Jim, and that's the great thing of just giving yourself a chance to win by betting in the low margin. That's why I love the rugby league or the rugby union so much.
We're going to come on to that, of course.
Two runners, and if you keep your betting to two runners, it keeps things a lot simpler. And that's what I do bet in running match odds as well, obviously. But I much prefer to bet the two runners if I can.
And in terms of this title race in England, were you ever tempted? I think we all thought it was down to Arsenal, Man City, didn't we? Were you ever tempted in that two-runner race to get involved? Yeah,
buttons. I got buttons on Arsenal, but a lot of the big faces did play big at 4-6 and 2 on, and fair play, they got the money. I think I know they're great players. Everyone knew how good they were, but you got to buy these great players like Semenya and Gruel that you bought from Palace. I think that's what's kept City in it. I think if it wasn't for those two, there were weak links in that City team, and I think it would have been well over by now if it wasn't for those two great signings from Pep, which obviously in the future will probably be even more important.
And I think at the other end of the table in England, I think the one that's really shocked everybody, they've shocked everybody, and that's Spurs being involved in that relegation battle. But Now we're asking, Harry, are they involved in the relegation battle, given that they took a point at Anfield? And okay, the European tie midweek didn't matter in terms of relegation, but surely given them a lift that they had a much better performance against Atletico Madrid. But it's still, 94 each of 3 to join the other 2 going down?
Well, unbelievable. Obviously, the 2 are already down. So you're looking at one more, and you're looking at Forest, West Ham and Spurs. I've never seen betting like it. They're almost all the same price on the exchange, just over 2 to 1 to go down. So that's the price, really, because the only other real runner is Leeds at 6 to 1, and they can't go down. I've done my brains on Leeds. I reckon the last 8 times, I bet them all the time. The last 8 matches they've played, I've bet them in running at least 5 of the times. And they funny how they were going to be my biggest anti-post bet of the season, to be the top relegated team, just the 3 runners, them Burnley and Sunderland. I had a £2 treble. You have enhancers where you can bet teams like Inter Milan 1 to 8 to finish in the top 8, and Chelsea to finish in the top 8 at 1 to 8. So I was getting odds against Leeds to be the best of the 3 relegated teams. And I had the first £2 on. I was going to have another 2.5 on, but luckily I was speaking to Mathieu at Brentford before I put the other 2.5 on, and I said, "What do you think of this bet?" And I got a very curt text back saying that how shrewdly Sunderland had spent over the pre-season, and he couldn't have it on. He couldn't. No way could he bet it. So it just goes to show you've got to ask as many opinions as you can. And because so he saved me 2.5 there, but they're only 6 to 1 to get relegated now. But like I say, I still, there's no way they'll get to go down. So it looks an absolute bun fight between the other 3, and you literally can't split them on the market. I've never seen betting so close on relegation ever before.
I'll tell you what, he was right about Sunderland though, because they've got their points in the bag early, didn't they?
I knew he was right after about 3 weeks, and the first 2 had already gone on. To be fair, I didn't mind it. I'd have had that on anyway, but certainly I knew he'd. That's what, when you're a punter, you got to look for every edge you can. Yeah. And I thought if anyone knows how well they've bought, it was him. And it took him about 2 seconds to let me know that they'd spent so wisely, which is something, of course, he and Tony Bloom do every day of the week.
Well, we're going to come on to Tony in a minute as well, but I'm just like one last look at that relegation battle at the bottom. Wolves and Burnley, as we've alluded to, seem to have gone. It's between Spurs, West Ham and Forest, we think, for that final position. Harry's just pointed out just over 2 to 1 each of 3 on Betfair, whatever one you fancy to go down. Are you tempted to go in, Harry, at this stage?
No, I'd have to study it. No, it's not something I'd ordinarily bet on, and there might be a tier of value, but you'd have to study the remaining fixtures. And I haven't done that, and it's not something it's not a market I'd often play in.
Yeah. Champions League, I've sort of mentioned that already, how 1 or 2 of those ties went this midweek. Just looking at some of these aggregates, I mean, absolutely unbelievable, involving the English clubs in particular. Barcelona 8, Newcastle 3, PSG 8, Chelsea 2, Madrid 5, Manchester City 1, even the Spurs. Atletico was 7-5 in the end. Arsenal and Liverpool both getting through 3-1 and 4-1. You'd be betting the goals, Harry, surely.
Well, I'm well known as an unders man, but no, not anymore. And I've said that for a couple of years now. In the last couple of months, it's just gone crazy. I like the big overs. I got a little bit last night out of the first game because
the Barca game.
Yeah, if I think the 2.5 price under 2.5 was 5 to 2. It was 11 to 4 sort of thing. And if you get early goals, if the overs are real massive odds on, and you get early goals, I just tend to go for the juicy big prices over 7.5 and 8.5, because nowadays, once games are wide open, literally anything can happen. It's changed so much. Wasn't it funny this week? Just watch all the preview programs, and they're all talking about who's going to win. Same old thing that we've just said, how the 3 teams are 2 to 1 each to go down.
Yeah.
And all week everyone's asking about who's going to win the Champions League, and no one mentioned the draw.
Exactly.
It's as if they just ask them who's the better team.
Yeah.
And I mean, Arsenal, before Sporting Lisbon beat the Norwegians 5-0.
Bodo Glimt.
It was Bodo Glimt with like 6 on to go through, which gave Arsenal Arsenal had the most biased draw you could ever imagine, and would literally trading under 5 to 2 to win it. And yet people are saying, "Oh, fancy PSV," without even looking at the draw.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing about the betting market. They will tell you everything. You want to know the prices. And on this show, that people will know what the prices are.
And just to confirm that draw that Harry's mentioned, Bayern They play Real Madrid. It's Barcelona against Atletico. Sporting, as Harry said, against Arsenal. And Paris Saint-Germain against Liverpool. So, I mean, just looking at the draw, Harry, you've mentioned it. I mean, is there one that jumps out apart from Arsenal?
No, I mean, because the thing is with that draw, the Liverpool and PSG is the same half as Bayern.
Exactly,
and thing.
Yeah.
So you just can't back a team on that side of the draw. That's basically it. And but I think Arsenal, there might have been a bit of value, but I think once that the Norwegians got knocked out, it wasn't quite. Once the Glimt got knocked out, now it's the right price, and there was no sweets anyway. But that's what you're looking for with the draws. That was always the punting edge. Was as soon as the draw was made, be ready. And this is one of been when they've been doing it different this year with the new format. I think the Champions League's changed a lot of the format anyway, and I think you going back to all your the number of goals you've got. Yeah. I mean, in the old days with the group stages, quite often teams would go for a draw, especially away from home. That was more than commonplace. Whereas now, with this league, they've got the top 16, top 24. I don't think anyone ever plays for a draw, and I think that's a big thing. The rule changes, VAR, 10 minutes injuries. It's all goals. Yeah. And as we're going to talk, it's not just in football.
And I mean, the games are all 100 minutes now, aren't they?
Every game's 100 minutes. We're going to talk about rugby in a minute. There was a game 100 points, wasn't it? 40.
50-40, yeah. Murrayfield.
How can it be? How can it possibly be?
So some of you might have picked up on the fact that Harry mentioned the lizard earlier in the conversation, and you might be wondering who exactly is the lizard. Well, the lizard, of course, to his friends, is Tony Bloom, who's the man who put £10 million into Heart of Midlothian in the summer, and it's all worked out rather well for him, Harry. You know him well. Well,
yeah. With the old days, we used to work together at the very start of the star system, and I mean, even in my book, I mentioned that any bets we have on the horses, Glenn tells me what to have on, and if it's one of Tony's or anything to do with Tony, just double the stake. Well, I was up here at the start of the season, same as you, Jim, and the League Cup, the Scottish League Cup was on, and they were showing all the games, and we were betting Hearts, partly because of that, at the start of the season, and I think they won 2 games. I think they won 3 games in the last minute, 2 of them 3-2, and I watched the games, and I thought Hearts were lucky winners, and I didn't see anything in those. You shouldn't go on pre-season, and as Tony used to say to me, Harry, you just go on too short form. But watching him at the start of the season, I didn't see anything to make me to back him, whereas I always think that anything that he's involved with, you should be betting him. But I'm lucky to be fair. I nearly backed him last week before they got beat by Kilmarnock, because I thought that Motherwell had been the team that had been, if I was, so at least I didn't go in last week when, of course, they then put in a disappointing against Kilmarnock and Celtic beat Motherwell. So I think it's a real hard call. It's great to be up here this season when for the first time ever, it's in my lifetime, really, it's not a 2-horse race, and it's good to see. And a bit like the relegation battle, I don't know where the value is now, but there's so much negativity around the Celtic, from Celtic people. So I'd still, at this stage, with them being as short, I'll be looking. There's 5 when they have the cut off and they all play each other.
Yeah, the split, the top 6.
Yeah, which makes it so different to all the others. Yeah. So when that happens, I think that's the time when take stock of the fixtures and see if there's any value there.
Yeah, well, just going into, as we approach that split in Scotland, the betting at the moment for the Scottish Premiership title is roughly 13-10. Celtic, they're now flip-flopping favourites. Hearts were favourites before last weekend. So it's 13-10 Celtic, 9-4 now Hearts, if you still think they can hang on. Remember, they're just 2 points clear now. And 11-4 Rangers, who went to St Mirren the other night and struggled a bit, but got the result. So they're still hanging in there as well. But I
think I didn't watch all that game, but on the stats, I think they'd only won 1-0. But I think maybe a 2-0, 2.5-0 would have been more fair scoreline. So I think they've done it all right at St Mirren.
Do you think there's any value left in the market, though?
No, like I said, I'll wait till the split, and then I want to be against Celtic, really, especially the last couple of weeks, and knowing they had to play Motherwell. Yeah. I think the general feeling up here has been that Motherwell, we talk about the big 3, but in terms of how the games have gone this season, I think in general people think that Motherwell have been just as impressive as those other 3, really.
And what have you made of the reaction up here to what Tony Bloom has done at Hearts? Obviously, he's brought in his Jamestown analytics as well, and it seems to be paying off for them. I mean, they're they're in a fantastic position going into these last few games of the season, aren't they? Unthinkable at the start.
Well, it's incredible. But I mean, I took me off the ball. Union goal was they'd done loads of damage before I knew he was involved.
Exactly,
he doesn't.
Yeah. That's in Belgium, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, just changing. It's what he always said right at the start, really. And Como. I mean, I used to go to Como. I'm a big late, Como man, and I used to go and watch Como. And it's a different ground. There's a new ground now. It's a whole new thing. So I think when it comes to football, I was speaking about Benham earlier. I think both of them are great for football. I think you look at the Premier League and you're looking at money coming from Qatar and money coming from Asia and businessmen who are outside of football. I think two British clubs and Brentford and Brighton. I remember when you spoke at the start of the show about Denman.
Yeah.
And when Denman won the Gold Cup, I remember long before the Gold Cup, a couple of years, Greg Wood, the Racing Guardian journalist, said to me, what's your mate, the poker player, going to do to my football club? And he was screaming at me, saying that what he's going to do. And I told them all then what I said, because I was doing plenty of interviews around that time, Denman Gold Cup time. And Brentford, I think, had just got promoted. And I said, neither of them will go down. Yeah. So 20 years' time, they'll both won't go down. And look what's happened. Neither of them have ever looked like going down.
So again, Harry, for maybe there's some Hearts fans watching, what was Bloom's background? What do they not know?
Well, they're just ahead of. He's an amalgamate. He amalgamates opinions, and he just takes it to another level. Yeah. In terms of, team news. But I mean, I remember right at the start of the Champions League, I used to watch every Champions League game on the Betamax boxes and score them. And now we'd have 10 people doing it, and it'd have computers and data and everything. And then I just think both clubs it's exceptional what they've done. And this year, without patronising anyone, this year at Brentford especially, I knew Mathieu sold 10% of the club, and the man Thomas Frank went, who's obviously well respected. He obviously had the poison chalice at Spurs, but even I thought Brentford. I mean, people did actually bet Brentford to go down. They were nibbled out in the market to go down this year, and now they've. I think this season, especially in talking about the word clever, I think they're the cleverest team in the Premier League. Brentford, if for that particular word, I think it's just the set pieces and all this, but I think what they've done this year is really exceptional.
Yeah, fascinating. And this weekend in Scotland, if you're interested, Rangers at home to Aberdeen, Celtic away to Dundee United. That's on Sunday. Remember, they lost there earlier in the season when they were managed by Wilfried Nancy. And of course, United, they've just chucked away the Dundee derby. They were 2-0 up, and they managed to draw 2-2 with Dundee getting 2 goals back in added time last weekend. So Hearts, they play Dundee this weekend at Tynecastle. So the fact it's at Tynecastle, they really have to get back to winning ways. So quite a few miles left in this Scottish Premiership title race, and of course we'll be reflecting that on the programme here, the Betting Oracle, all season and beyond, because no doubt that whatever Tony Bloom's foundations that he's put into Hearts this season, they will be there to work the Oracle for them next season. Of course, you can follow us at the Betting Oracle HQ on all the socials. Do go and follow us on there. But of course, the big football story this week has been the African Nations Cup and the decision to take the trophy away from Senegal and give it to Morocco. And the bookies, Harry, some of the bookies at least, are now going to pay out on Morocco as well.
I'm staggered.
So was I.
Especially, I mean, during the whole tournament, it was crooked for Morocco, win decisions throughout. And then they've got the penalty, missed the penalty, got beat, and then 3 months later, they still win it. I think it's a disgrace. I'm glad for I always love punters winning, and anyone who's got Morocco, I know Betfred, to be fair, has paid out someone 3-1 today on Morocco. I think they went in expecting to get told to.
Yeah.
Is
that a good move from the bookmakers? Is it good PR?
Listen, I'm not pro bookmaker, but it is good PR if they're paying out. I mean, normally they often say it, and it's when they haven't laid. But Morocco were favourites, 3-1 favourites. So I'd imagine if he's paying out one, but he's paying them all out. And but if I was a bookmaker and I'd paid out on Senegal, I'd be well pissed with that, because I think it's ridiculous. I think it was a sham as it happened, and I think it's an even bigger sham now.
Oh, well, sham or not, Morocco are now named as the winners of AFCON for 25. But we're moving on. Just a quick mention. I know we're going to be here right through the summer, guys and gals, and we'll be covering the World Cup, obviously, in America. Despite all the problems that are going around the world, that we do expect the World Cup to go ahead. And the latest betting on that, 9-2 Spain, 6-1 England, 8-1 France, and then you've got 17-2 Argentina. Brazil, who are in Scotland's group, they're 17-2 as well. You're then 14-1 Germany, 16-1 Ronaldo's Portugal, and you can name your price about any of the other teams. But that's a tournament, Harry, that we're going to be covering in the summer. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. And having most of our bets on the Asian handicaps in the group matches and in the matches, and no builder bets. Just try and back the winners in the match. That's hard enough. And but it's great in the World Cup. You genuinely get you can genuinely get matches where they get the wrong favourite, and it's your own opinion. There's no excuses. You see them all playing in the groups, and it's a great betting opportunity. Looking forward to it.
So you still have to be clued up, though. You're not just going with the market. You still have to be clued up.
Oh, absolutely. But like I say, most of the stuff I do is in running, so I let all the other people read all the brochures, and if I look for a bit of value in the outright, maybe. It's a bit different. There's more teams this year. I don't think that's a great idea. I think there was enough before. But it's more football to watch, I suppose. And it's not as good as the old days with the unders. That used to be. Those South American teams with the unders. They were the glory days.
I think that's maybe a good point to move on to our next sport on this week's programme, and that's rugby union, because we've just finished the Six Nations Championship, and I love that there was a thing doing the rounds on social media about how topsy-turvy this whole campaign has been, and it basically said Italy beat Scotland, who beat France, who beat Ireland, who beat England, who beat Wales, who beat Italy, just to complete the whole circle. It really was, Harry, crazy stuff throughout those weeks of the Six Nations.
Oh, I think you've summed it up brilliantly. No, I wasn't on my own. Everyone, pre-tournament, I didn't know anyone who didn't want to be against Ireland.
Exactly,
everyone wanted to be against Ireland. That was the big clue. And they were a short head away from Henry Pollock losing his marbles for 2 seconds. They're literally 2 seconds away from winning it, Ireland. And that was what everyone wanted to be. So like everyone else, I was on the dual forecast, England and France. And after 2 games, I polled into France for the Grand Slam. So I left it behind, and I think most punters did. Yeah. Once again, apart from the people who were betting the overs were just all over the place. And like we said earlier, £50 to 40. The last 2 games on the last day were both 20 points over the over mark, and I think the sport's changing, and even more so in the rugby league now, where we have the 6 more all the time in the NRL, and the Super League are going that way, which is good for Super League. They needed to. I'm not quite sure so much with the NRL, but it's causing plenty of controversy at the moment over there as to just what they're giving them for. But we'll see how it pays out. But there won't be many unders going in this year.
There was no Grand Slam for France, of course, but they did get the title. And I think they were 25-1 on at one point, weren't they? And then it all got a bit hairy at the end.
They were, and I don't know what price Ireland were after that. Early on, you got a massive price then. So no, it was bang on top twice when they scored with 2.5 minutes to go, and then when Pollock got the ball, it really should have been over. So anyone who did bet the championship only had a great escape, one of the great escapes.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to change the shape of the ball. We're going to keep the same shaped ball as we move on to our next topic on the programme this week, because if you have read Harry Finlay's book, you might know that he dedicated that book to the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and that is a rugby league team in Australia, and that is a sport that you absolutely adore.
Oh, it's great. And it's the time of the day as well, In the morning, I just watched the Bulldogs this morning winning Canberra.
How did that go?
Pissing with rain. Yeah, they won. They deserve to win, to be fair. The Raiders nearly nicked it on the bell, but best team won on the night. That's the first game since they played in Vegas, because they had the bye week last week. But no, I think after last year, where my friend Madge McGuire, who was the manager of the Rabbitohs at the time, He won last year with the Brisbane Broncos after getting so much stick. And I think he's a legend. And big game for him this week. They've lost the first two since the 3 games they won last year, the 3 come from behind finals. Well, I've never seen excitement like it. And I really do think that it's had an effect. I think this year it's going to be massive for the NRL. And it started, I've never seen more interest in it. And crucially for me, every game's on in the morning.
Yeah.
So like 9 o'clock this morning.
Because we're over here.
Yeah. Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, a really early start on a Sunday. But you can watch it. Not all the games are on Sky. They pick 2 or 3 games a week. But there's a fantastic website, thenrl.com, where you can pay 143 quid. And anywhere you are in the world, you can get every single game that's played. And they're all played split times. There's never 2 games at the same time. It's so well run and so well organised, apart from what they want to charge on Betfair. So it's not on the exchanges. But it's such a well-run sport. And fortunately, Super League are going very much the same way. Split time in the games, copying the NRL, even the rules, I say, with the 6 more tackles. And that's what they've got to do, because the NRL have got it right. And I think that, and Papua New Guinea, who are going to be joining in 2028, there's another team in Perth, the Melbourne, the Legend. I think NRL is only getting bigger than better. And I think there's a real chance for Super League. I think betting's a lot to do with it. I think, like I say, the 2 runner markets, I think the best thing in the world to bet and for excitement is to have a rugby league handicap bet or win on and then sit and watch the game. I don't think it gets better than that. And I think that Super League will have a good couple of years as well as the NRL. But there's no bets this week. I mean, no one has had a strong 3 weeks of the season now. No strong bets, but I'm sure that during the season we'll find a few bets to have.
No bets this weekend on the NRL from Harry, but just looking ahead to these next few weeks, who are the teams we should be watching out for?
Well, there's 2. The Broncos, as I say, they won it last year.
Yeah.
And they've lost the first 2 this year. Last week after being 20 points to 6 up early. But they're playing Melbourne Storm this week, and they're without Adam Reynolds. That's a handicap of 8 or 9. I'll be staying out, but I'll be funking for the Broncos, but I think they'll find it hard. And Penrith Panthers have started well, with Nathan Cleary saying they're only at 70%, and they're looking, if anyone, if you had to pick one team to definitely be in the top 4 at the end of the year, early on, you'd have to say Penrith, yet again.
Penrith, I think they're playing the Roosters this weekend, is that right? Yeah.
2 games Saturday, 2 cracking games.
Yeah.
We'll see. And the Roosters, Warriors form's all right from the first game, and they were all right last week. So they're the 2 games I'm looking forward to watching most this week. I think they're both Saturday morning.
Having sailed down the Parramatta River, the one that really appeals to me is the Parramatta Eels.
Yeah, I think the Sydney boys like them against the Dragons on Sunday, but I thought the Dragons were a little bit unlucky maybe in both their first 2 games, and I'm not sure about that Para form at Brisbane last week, so the Sydney boys like Para a bit more than me, but another problem this weekend is the weather's meant to be terrible in Sydney, and that affects it, especially the unders and overs markets.
And last weekend, of course, staying in Australia, we had the Australian Grand Prix, which got the Grand Prix circuit off to a flying start. A little bit of a hiccup now because of the war in the Middle East, but of course we're racing in Japan next weekend, so we'll have more on that next week, Harry. But what a start for Antonelli, 19 years old, gets the first Grand Prix in the bag, and of course Lewis Hamilton, his first podium since 2024.
Yeah, incredible. No, I mean, the Mercedes are flying, and absolutely flying. So much so that my Grand Prix man, who very rarely bets the short odds, he's in the last 24 hours, he's already bet George Russell to win in Japan.
Right.
At odds on. So
4-6.
Yeah, I think he's got a bit better than that, but not a lot better. And he must really think that the Mercedes will certainly be a lot faster in Japan as well.
Yeah, Russell, again, we'll touch on this next week, the Japanese Grand Prix, but Russell 4-6 at the moment for that. Antonelli 15-4. Leclerc, if you fancy him, 11-1, and Hamilton 11-1 as well. Although saw Hamilton being interviewed, I don't think he said he was going to win a Grand Prix anytime soon, but I think he was just delighted to be back on the podium because it's been a barren spell for him.
Well, it's funny enough. I remember when he got shafted. When I was on the winner when Max won the world title, but what they've done to Lewis Hamilton that day, I'll never. We talk about Morocco and Senegal, that was worse. And I've never met Lewis. I don't know Lewis, but I have got more respect for how Lewis Hamilton handled those 2 hours after that than almost anything else in his career, because God knows what I'd have done, and God knows what Alex Higgins would have done, but I just cannot believe what they done to him. I thought it was absolutely scandalous, and there was talk of him afterwards retiring from the sport. And I remember ringing up the team he was driving for. I remember ringing up the thing, and because I've obviously met a few sportsmen at the time, and I think retiring early is what so many sportsmen, and they all regret it so much. And I remember speaking to a real shrewd lady at his team, and I said to him, look, whatever Lewis does, about retiring, and I told him, I sent her 3 documentaries from Bill Shankly.
Right, okay.
I said to her, whatever you do, again, this woman was right involved with Lewis, real top person at the garage. And I said to her, whatever you do, I said, make sure, I don't know if he saw them, but I said, make sure you show Lewis Hamilton these documentaries on Bill Shankly.
Yeah.
Because what Bill Shankly done, and it would have been so easy for Lewis, that was so bad what they'd done to him, I could easily see myself retiring. But it was just when you said that about him being on the podium, they just don't, they can't stop it. And what they're doing as well, the danger of it all, and all the money he's got and all the success, and still he's fighting for 3rd place all these years later. I hope he did watch the programmes, because Bill Shankly retiring was one of the saddest things and the wrongest things that anyone's ever done. And he paid for it with his life and with his heart. Yeah. And so the message is, don't retire, keep going, because being a sportsman or being involved in sport at the cliff face is the greatest thing it's what we all dream about.
If you don't know that story, when Bill Shankly supposedly retired, he was still turning up at Liverpool training, wasn't he?
The whole thing's so sad.
Quite sad in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was scandalous. Yeah, really, really, really sad. But he was a stubborn. Well, one of the words, stubborn's the right word. But he certainly, if you're ever thinking of retiring and you don't know whether to or not, watch Bill Shankly's documentaries, and you definitely stay along for another year.
Well, another sport we're going to be covering on this programme, and very soon, in fact, because the Masters is going to be starting soon. That's golf, obviously. And last weekend, it was a Players' Championship. It turned out to be a fascinating tournament in the end. I'm a Scot, you might have worked out. And obviously, McIntyre I always said he rode a great race. He had a great tournament. Bob McIntyre from Oban had a great tournament, ended up finishing 4th in the Players. He now heads for the Masters at Augusta with all the other top players. He's a 50-1 chance with some of the bookies. He's only 44-1 on Betfair, but just giving you a flavour of that Masters betting at the moment, because obviously we'll go into some detail on it on the programme in a couple of weeks' time. But Scotty Scheffler, winner 22-24, you won't be surprised to hear, is the 9-2 general favourite. You've then got Rory sort of trading at 9 and 10-1, Rory McIlroy. You've got Bryson DeChambeau at 16-1. John Rahm, 2023 winner at Augusta, he's training at 14-1. You've got Tommy Fleetwood at 20s. Schauffele 16-1. Interesting price, I thought. Lowry, he's a 50-1 chance. Surely you'll get 100 if you shop around. McIntyre I've mentioned, and Fitzpatrick 66-1. Fitzpatrick, I think there'll be some interest in that. 11 years, would you believe, since Jordan Spieth won the Masters in 2015. He's dropped off the planet, Jordan Spieth. Seems to have done anyway.
Yeah, and he was flying at the time. He was absolutely flying at the time.
So the Masters is going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, but we want to finish the show this week on the programme by talking about cycling, because this weekend in cycling it is the Milan San Remo road race. It's 185 miles. It's the longest one-day race in Europe. It's a race that Harry's really been getting into this week, and I think, Harry, it's your bet of the week in this race.
Yeah, it is, funny enough. It's funny, my life sort of really changed during the worst COVID year, because my pal who'd, my cycling mate, who was one of the 3 guys I speak to now, hadn't been to see it, and with COVID being on, we knew we'd get in all the hotels and the restaurants, and I went for a couple of days, and I haven't missed it since, and I'm going all over the place following Pog now, and it's absolutely, taken over big parts of my life, the cycling, really, in terms of travel and watching it, and I don't miss a race. And as I say, I'll speak to 3 different guys, and they all make that Mathieu van der Poel a real short price this weekend, shorter than evens, in fact, and I managed to get on at 7-4. He was 15-8, 7-4. Now I'm still getting 13-8 and over 6-4 on the exchanges. So at 6-4 against, I'm backing Mathieu van der Poel to win the win the Milan San Remo.
So it's the first major classic race of the season. This guy Van der Poel, who Harry is alluding to, you spell it by the way, Van der, VANDERPOEL. You'll see it right at the top of the betting, no matter which firm you go to get your bet on. It is the first major classic of the season. He has finished, he's actually won 2 yellow jerseys in the Tour de France, hasn't he? So this guy's got a pedigree.
Well, it's this particular race.
Yeah.
I honestly think that the great Pog, my favourite sportsman ever now, I just adore everything to do with him. My wife does even more. He's such a great lad, but I just think that...
Is this Pogacar?
Yes, it's Pogacar.
Yeah.
And he's the second favourite. He's the one who's obviously making the price for the favourite, who we believe should be a fair bit shorter. But I really do think that the Van der Poels here and in Paris-Roubaix, I even think that Vingegaard going for the Giro this year. He hasn't won it before, and he needs it for the trifecta of the big three. But I believe that they really have to take their opportunities when they can beat Pog. There's 2 small hills. He beat him before last year, and as long as he keeps hold of Pog and it becomes a sprint finish again, in a sprint finish, you'd have to make Van der Poel maybe 4 on 2 to 9 to beat Pog. So basically, the start of the race is very quiet, but when it comes to the business stage of the race, you're just hoping and praying that he holds on to Pog and Pog doesn't break away. And if it comes to a sprint, we'll all be very, very surprised if Van der Poel doesn't win it.
So roughly the betting at the moment, 11-8 Van der Poel. And the pod, as Harry calls him, 2-1, 10-1 bar. Is there a danger we think it's a 2-horse race, Harry?
Well, no, if the third favourite of the books is Garner, and he was very close last year. He had an exceptionally good race last year. But be hard to see him breaking away, and I always fancy Van der Poel in a sprint. And as I say, I do think that these riders, when they know when they got a chance to beat Pog, when things are in their favour, and I think it'll be more or less be, I think Van der Poel will be looking at this and Paris-Roubaix again as the times when he really has to beat Pog.
And this is a guy who's won this race twice before, including last year. He's 31 for a cyclist, peak of his powers.
Yeah, no, they know this is his job, and hopefully we'll get the money.
Harry, thanks very much. If you are going to have a small bet on that selection from Harry, good luck. Remember, the race is on Saturday, so if you're watching us Saturday, Sunday, you've missed it, but if you're watching us Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning even, I'm sure you'll be able to get a bet on. It's been a really busy first programme here on the Betting Oracle. My thanks to Harry Finlay. I'm Jim Dillahunt, and we'll be joining you every single week here on this programme, and we hope to see you throughout the rest of the year. Good luck with your betting this weekend. Thanks very much for joining us, and don't forget the Betting Oracle HQ on all the socials. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.